Well, it's that time of year again. Halloween. A time where people seem to be fixated on all things vaguely frightening and macabre. Me personally, I've made it a yearly tradition every Halloween to play through a special little game called Luigi's Mansion. One of, if not my all-time personal favorite video games. I've played through this game so many times that I could probably give a new player a step-by-step walkthrough on how to beat the entire game without even seeing the gameplay footage. That A-rank mansion screen never gets any less satisfying to see. Luigi's Mansion, I love you. But what of the sequels? Dark Moon is perfectly fine for what it is, although it's not my favorite thing in the world. And I really like 3, although there are definitely some parts that really put a damper on any subsequent playthroughs, so to speak. Of course, you could probably tell where I'm going with all this. If you follow my YouTube input at all, you know that I sometimes come up with weird ideas for video games, and then get an obsessive itch to make a video about those ideas. If you haven't been following me long enough to know that, that's how it is around here. I don't think any further build-up or explanation is required, so let's just jump straight into it. This is Luigi's Mansion 4. So when discussing ideas for a fourth Luigi's Mansion game, people tend to speculate on what kind of a location Luigi would be exploring. The first game, as advertised, takes place in a large haunted mansion. The second game starts out in a haunted mansion before branching out into a couple of different areas. And the third game returns to having one location with a big hotel. So, what did I come up with for Mansion 4's setting? Well, and maybe this isn't as impressive an idea as I thought it was, but for a while I've thought it would be kind of interesting to set a Luigi's Mansion game in an old haunted town. Now I get why this idea might not seem so appealing. From a game feel perspective, you'd lose that sense of claustrophobia you get from exploring more enclosed environments if you were out in a town. And from a control perspective, the fixed cameras of the Luigi's Mansion series probably wouldn't be that great for exploring a more open, towny environment. But the town itself would serve more as a hub world, connecting the actual levels together. There'd be stuff to do in the hub town, such as puzzles to solve, ghosts to fight, and maybe even story events, but the main meat of the gameplay would take place once again in the smaller enclosed areas. If done right, it could be a nice marriage between 1's more open and interconnected design, and 2 and 3's more varied environments. What, it could be a polycule. Setting the game within a town or a city would also help with the variety of environments to explore, since you don't have to worry about everything making sense within one location. If we were exploring another mansion again, it wouldn't make as much sense to have something like a shopping center or a cave around here. But since we're not just exploring a mansion, those environments would make for an easier sell. Some areas could be new takes on location types we've seen before, such as a haunted mansion, a museum, a factory, a beach, a graveyard, or a mine shaft. But the game could, and of course should, have plenty of new level themes as well, such as a hospital, a toy store, an arcade, a carnival, or a forest. But hold that thought for now, I'll come back to the topic of levels later on in the video. The game could even have some non-linearity in that sometimes clearing one area could open multiple at once, though it wouldn't happen too often so that it messes with the difficulty curve or any story progression that might occur. But you might be thinking, why is Luigi exploring an abandoned haunted city in the first place? In his research, Professor Egad has stumbled upon some supernatural readings for a small, off-the-mark town called Dead End Town. He decides to investigate, bringing Mario, Luigi, and Polterpup along with him for backup. This is a great idea. Surprisingly, when they get there, the place is absolutely crawling with ghosts, led by one Bartholomew Grimm, or, as the townsfolk know him, Mayor Grimm. The specters capture our heroes, though Luigi manages to get away, even finding a new model of the Poltergust that Egad brought along with him, the Poltergust 7C. Now that he's equipped, and after a short tutorial segment, Luigi goes about finding the others. You would find Egad first, probably right after or even midway through the first area, and he would set up the base of operations and give Luigi the compulsory communications device. I don't know exactly what it would be called, there's only so many more Nintendo handhelds to parody. The point is, from here, you're sent on your way to find the rest of the group. Surprisingly though, it's not long after getting squared away that we actually find Mario.
Mario? Oh.
This presents a problem.
Okay, so it's safe to assume that this game wouldn't go as far as to say that Mario died. I mean, it's not Super Paper Mario, for crying out loud. More so, it's that Mario's spirit has been separated from his body. Now, in addition to finding Polterpup, the gang also needs to find a way to get Mario back to normal. And if you're wondering about Polterpup, he's saved partway through the adventure, probably after some significant boss fight, much like how you saved the 3 Toads in Luigi's Mansion 3. And on that note, there's probably a couple of those little guys running around in need of saving as well. That's all I have on the story for now, so let's hop into some gameplay stuff. Let's start off by talking about Luigi. He has all of his abilities from the previous entry: the Strobulb, the Dark Light, the Plunger, and the Burst Jump. The Slam attack can also return so long as it gets toned down to give the enemy some kind of fighting chance against you. I haven't added any major new abilities to Luigi's moveset, as I imagine it'd be kinda hard to do that without the moveset starting to feel a little cluttered. No, the new moves you're going to be using come from Mario. The player can switch between Luigi and Mario with the click of a stick. Or, if you're playing multiplayer, player 2 controls Mario. Yes, this does mean that Luigi wouldn't be playable in this game. He'd definitely have some kind of cameo appearance though. Now that he's a ghost, Mario has the ability to possess certain objects in the environment in order to help Luigi solve puzzles or progress through levels. Close enough. Welcome back, Legend of Zelda Spirit Tracks. Mario's big drawback could be one of 2 things. Either A, he can't fight enemy ghosts, only stunning/holding them back, or B, Mario can fight enemy ghosts, be it with a spare model of the Poltergust or some sort of ghost powers, but there would be certain areas that he wouldn't be able to access. Much like how Luigi couldn't go in water, perhaps there could be ghostly barriers that he can't pass through, or some kind of spell that prevents him from accessing certain areas, and Luigi would have to do something to remove these restrictions. Conversely, just like with Luigi, there'd be areas that only Mario could access, and Luigi can't. Can't have a Luigi's Mansion game without ghosts to capture, and I'm hoping that here we'll be able to rectify one of Luigi's Mansion 3's biggest issues, the enemy variety. There are very few actual enemy types throughout Luigi's Mansion 3, and what enemy variety there is doesn't even matter because you end up fighting so many of these little blue guys compared to anything else. Yes, they can adopt a handful of different equipments and behaviors, but it does not offset the sameness of fighting the same guys over and over and over and over again. Ideally, a 4th game would still have these little ankle-biter type ghosts, but different behaviors would be attributed to different enemies with unique designs. And I know that it would be more of a hassle to include more enemy types with different character models and animations, but surely we could do better than 5 main ghost types, right? Some enemies could even do that thing that video games do sometimes where boss attack patterns could be repurposed into regular enemies. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? Early game boss who throws projectiles you have to shoot back, mid-game regular enemy who throws projectiles you have to shoot back. You know what I'm saying, right? There should even be enemies that only one of the 2 brothers can defeat, or enemies that require both of them to work together to take down. This could create moments of tension where the brothers have to split up, only to find, oh no, there's an enemy that one brother can't defeat without the other's help. And to parallel the player, there should even be enemy types that can possess objects in the environment to attack you. Some of these objects would even be ones that you'd need Mario to possess, meaning you'd need to flush out the enemy first. Probably the biggest challenge I faced when trying to make this video was the question of how exactly this game would be structured. How many levels would there be, how big would the levels be, and how many boss ghosts would you encounter throughout the game? The obvious answer is likely to just do something similar to what Luigi's Mansion 3 did. Have a bunch of levels, each ending with its own boss fight. Though in my mind, Mansion 4 would have about as many areas as Luigi's Mansion 3, give or take a couple, but on the whole they'd probably be a bit bigger, and feature multiple boss ghosts instead of just the one. Ideally, that would leave us somewhere in the ballpark of 15 to 20 areas to explore, but I only came up with 10 or so areas with 3 boss ghosts each, so that's all you're gonna get out of me. Let's start exploring those areas, starting with...
This mansion appeared in a big puff of doom, and it's dusty as shit. Here, take this vacuum.
A mansion full of ghosts. What a concept. This would be the first main area of the game. You'd play through it before even reuniting with Mario. The mansion itself would essentially feel like an abridgment of the original game's main setting, and also, by extension, Gloomy Manor from Dark Moon. You'd explore a ballroom, a library, decorated washrooms, and even go both down into the basement and up into the attic. Perhaps even going outside to go around the gardens at one point. Truly immerse yourself in the experience of upper-class living by abusing the working staff, who would be both the first and second boss encounters in the game, Marianne the maid, who you might find roaming the halls, and Edwin the butler, who would either be in the kitchen or out in the garden. The level would cap off with you encountering the wealthy lady of the house, who is surprisingly hospitable to everyone but Luigi.
I don't like to be alone at the toy store. Where are my friends?
So, as I said, the mansion would be the first area, and of course I'm saving what would be the final area till last. But these other areas I'm going to talk about are a bit more nebulous in terms of placement in the game, especially since, as stated before, these wouldn't even be all of the levels you'd encounter on the adventure. Anyway, the toy store, a place where a bunch of creepy and potentially dangerous toys can be possessed by aggressive ghosts with violent tendencies. Great. I can imagine some kind of puzzle involving pull-string dolls and you'd have to use the vacuum in order to pull their strings. That could be kind of fun. Maybe your ultimate goal in this area is to reach the highest floor of the store, and you'd have to do that by building a tower of blocks. I don't know. As for boss fights, there'd definitely be some kind of possessed toy boss. But there'd also be a scene where you find a toy train roaming around on its own, and upon taking a peek inside, you'd be teleported inside the train and have to fight the conductor. I don't know, it seems like a very Luigi's Mansion thing to have happen, doesn't it? Our man boss, though, would be an old toy maker named Willy, who puts his skills to the test by creating different toys to attack Luigi, some of which Mario would possess in order to turn the tables on the boss. Why is that making me think of Anton Blast?
And do it all from space! Cookie! Space!
We're escaping to the one place that hasn't been corrupted by the ghosts yet. Space! Well, not really. Rather, we're going to a planetarium/space center type area. However, you'd still have to contend with gravity-shifting puzzles and plenty of space-themed hazards. Ooh, imagine riding on a rocket ship by grabbing onto it using the vacuum as it flies around. Or how about having to dodge meteors as you run around on like a fake asteroid or something? Maybe even do a send-up to the Astral Hall from the first game by sucking up a shooting star and blasting it back out at something. Robot ghosts? What is this? Sims 3 Into the Future expansion? Don't worry, there'd also be a boss fight against an alien ghost, maybe after you lure him out of his spaceship. And waiting for us at the end would be an encounter with Captain Blastroid. He may not be a real astronaut, but that ray gun can shoot real lasers, so stay on your toes. At least as best as you can in a weird gravity-shifting nuthouse like this.
Who's the murderer? Which one of you did it?
This chapter of the game would play out differently from the others. The brothers meet Detective Stumped, a hard-boiled noir-type detective. He has a hunch that something, or someone, is manipulating Mayor Grimm from behind the scenes, and enlists the help of the brothers to see if they can help solve the case. So in this chapter, instead of heading to one area that has multiple bosses, you'd head to multiple areas that each have one boss, as you search around town following various leads to see if any of them can lead to clues. This would offer an excuse to explore some level themes that we wouldn't be able to, or maybe just straight up wouldn't want, to expand into full stages, such as a restaurant, a greenhouse, a movie theater, a beach, a hospital, I think I already said that one, or an art studio. At the end of each of these mini areas, you'd find a clue from the boss you defeat, and once you bring them all back to Detective Stumped, he deduces that the person manipulating Mayor Grimm is a big-nosed guy with a mustache and a green hat. That, actually sounds like Mayor Grimm himself, now that I say it out loud. Sorry, boys, but it, seems like I'm at a bit of a loss here. Guess you can go on your way for now. Wait a minute! What's worse than fighting ghosts in a creepy abandoned town? Fighting ghosts in the dark woods right on the outskirts of a creepy abandoned town. Navigating the spooky-looking trees, which may or may not attack you, just saying, will lead you deep throughout the heart of the woodlands. This stage could very easily see the return of those carnivorous plant enemies that this series has taken a liking to, as well as having segments where you swing off of vines or even tree branches to get over gaps. I can also see a section towards the end of this area where you either climb around or explore the inside of a giant tree. I mean, why not? Unleash your inner Pac-Man world to Luigi's Mansion. Excuse me. As for the bosses, well, surely it couldn't get any worse than fighting a werewolf ghost, right? That's what poor old Luigi tells himself, but then he discovers the terrifying, vengeful forest spirit taking the form of a haunted tree. Okay, so that's the worst of it, right? No, because legends also tell of a headless rider roaming around these woods, bringing anyone around to a violent end. They mostly tell it to each other because no one ever actually comes around Dead End Town anymore. Extra life? Brother, if you're not careful around these parts, you're gonna end up in the afterlife. Possessive enemy ghosts will turn any cabinet in this arcade into a jump-scare-laden horror game, and you know these cheapskates aren't gonna be dispensing tickets anytime soon. Could you imagine, for a moment, since we're in a haunted arcade, seeing a reference to Bear from Five Guys? But there's no way in hell Next Level Games would be able to get away with it. Not under Nintendo's watch. But it's not just the video games you have to worry about in the arcade, as the already dark and cramped laser tag arena houses a bunch of ghosts who are definitely gonna be shooting to kill. You'd also hit up the bowling alley, where you'd have to face off against a boss ghost in a quick 10-pin challenge, and a go-kart track, where you race against a former celebrity race car driver. At the heart of this neon-colored nightmare is Lord Skelebit, no relation to the underwear, an ancient wizard who straight up pulls the brothers into an arcade game for his boss fight, leading the fight to take place in a fantasy RPG dungeon.
This scene is supposed to be in the Twilight Zone, a zone that is so deep below the surface that sunlight cannot reach it. Of course, the ride represents this in broad daylight with two screens that briefly display an octopus.
Normally, aquariums are full of water, but not to the point of being completely flooded. Now this level would start out as normal with you on dry land maneuvering around the water, until you'd get a cutscene where a ghost steals an important item, like a key or something, and dives beneath the surface. Not to worry though, the Poltergust 7C is not only waterproof, but it even has a special mode designed for underwater traversal. Allow me, if you feel so inclined, to introduce the Ectogen Tank. With a few simple adjustments, this handy little vac can travel beneath the waves. Underwater ghostbusting, folks. Okay, so how would aquatic movement in combat work? Well, I tossed around a few ideas, but what I eventually landed on was making it work mostly the same as dry land traversal. Left stick moves, right stick aims, buttons do all their things. However, by clicking in the left or right stick respectively, you can ascend or descend in vertical space. So you know, it'll be a lot like normal gameplay, except now you can move up and down. Not the most exciting gameplay change-up I know, but the alternative was giving you tank controls, or I guess submarine controls in this case, in a game that only ever has one camera angle. Ew. And once unlocked, the Ectogen tank can be used to access underwater rooms not only in any upcoming levels, but in any previous levels as well, such as a pool outside of the mansion, or a lake somewhere in the forest. Anyway, the aquarium itself. You'd be diving through different aquatic habitats, seeing underwater caverns, sunken ships, and yes, plenty of sea creatures. You ever been to one of those public aquariums, or even a fish store? Luigi would essentially be swimming through one of those. There would still be some rooms in this area that are on land, including one where you get to fight a fisherman boss ghost. But a majority of this level would likely be underwater, which means there would probably be some underwater boss fights too, such as this scuba diver fellow. And even our main boss for the level, Queen Coralia, or Coralia, I'm not exactly sure. We've had tree ghosts, we've had alien ghosts, so now here is a mermaid ghost.
I want a divorce.
It's not all doom and gloom in Dead End Town. Look, they even have their own amusement park. Overpriced cafe food will be the least of your problems as you match wits with ghosts who are having too much fun tormenting poor Luigi. There's a ton of potential for unique room interactions with rooms like the Hall of Mirrors or a spinning merry-go-round, not to mention fun set pieces like jumping on trampolines, swinging off trapezes, walking tightropes, and of course, riding a roller coaster. Of course, there'll also be carnival games to play, meticulously rigged by a resident scummy carnival barker, and a fortune-telling tent where you'll encounter, of all things, a genie. It's almost as if the guy writing this came up with the idea for a genie boss but didn't know where else to put him. But that's not the end of it. Don't think the ghosts wouldn't lead the brothers into a creepy dark ride, at the end of which you fight a boss. The star attraction of the carnival back in its heyday, Cacklin' Jacqueline, who won't give up the fight until she's had the last laugh. Amazing Digital Circus.
Here lie Squidward's hopes and dreams.
Just on the cusp of Dead End Town lies a graveyard, if there's ever a place you don't want to be when being hunted by ghosts. At first brush, a graveyard may seem a little too similar to the forest area, save for the angry Undertaker ghost roaming around. However, after spending some time outside, and defeating said angry Undertaker, you'd enter into a mausoleum. Suddenly, it turns into an underground catacomb stage, complete with puzzle rooms and booby traps. It's down here that you'd also encounter a grave robber ghost, who would even give the brothers some grief for a short while by setting off some of the traps leading up to the point where you fight him. You're really gonna need that flashlight as you descend down the mausoleum, as it gets darker the deeper you go down. And at the deepest point of the mausoleum, you'd encounter an ancient warrior, who would of course be the area boss for the graveyard.
This is illegal, you know.
The final stage has the brothers finally infiltrating Mayor Grimm's base of operations, the Town Hall. Since the hall also functions as a clock tower, you'll be maneuvering around the dangerous clockwork as you climb higher and higher up the tower, also likely solving many a clockwork-related puzzle along the way. Whether or not this stage would follow the formula of having multiple bosses is up for debate. You could definitely make some kind of henchman character to be Grimm's second in command and you'd fight them in this level, but the main event here would of course be the final battle with Mayor Grimm himself. The final battle takes place atop the clock tower, with the rest of Dead End Town visible in the background. Grimm would mostly attack using his magic pocket watch, be that by summoning ghostly clock hands that you'd have to jump over, or swinging pendulums that you'd have to dodge between. He'd also probably summon some regular enemy ghosts as fodder to attack you throughout the fight. Obviously, though, it's not just a single-phase boss battle, as after whittling down his health enough, Grimm pulls out his trump card. See, he's actually got Mario's body, keeping it in stasis, and he possesses it in a last-ditch effort to finally destroy the Mario Brothers for good. Phase 2 sees you fighting against Mayor Rio. We'll workshop it. Now he has a bunch of different abilities you'd expect to see from Mario, namely jumping around trying to stomp on you, but he can also use a handful of power-ups we've seen the plumber use throughout the years, such as the Fire Flower, the Cape Feather, and even the Bubble Flower from Mario Wonder. And just when you think that's over, Grimm pulls out a Mega Mushroom and uses it to grow giant for one final phase, where he tries to crush you into dust. Eventually, though, the fight finally comes to an end. Grimm is defeated, and Mario gets his body back. There could even be one final set piece where Luigi and the now once again human Mario have to team up to escape from the collapsing clock tower. Or maybe it could just happen in a cutscene, who knows. With all of the heroes safe and reunited, they can finally escape from Dead End Town. But as a sign of good faith, they decide to release all of the captured ghosts, except for Mayor Grimm. Hopefully they found a containment spot for him that's far enough away from King Boo, and use all of the treasure they found to help fix up the town, which got into a bit of a bad state after the final boss fight. Yeah, I actually decided not to have King Boo appear as the surprise villain, but you totally could if you wanted him to be the mastermind behind everything. In fact, that's what would most likely happen if Next Level Games actually made this game. But that's also why I included that chapter with Detective Stumped. If King Boo is a twist villain, then the idea that there's someone manipulating Mayor Grimm could be foreshadowing. If King Boo doesn't show up at all, then it could be a red herring. I also had this alternate version of the plot in mind where Dead End Town is cursed so that the ghosts can't leave, and they're trying to break the spell, which is why they're doing all of this, and then at the end it would be revealed that Mayor Grimm is the one who cursed the town in the first place, and he did so that he could lure the Mario Brothers to him. That version of the plot would definitely lend itself better to the ending I brought up, but it feels a little bit too much like it's borrowing from Undertale, which I don't know if it would fit Luigi's Mansion very well. I guess it depends on who you ask. Before I wrap things up, I'm going to go over some miscellaneous thoughts and modes I came up with. The Scare Scraper would definitely return. They'd have to change it to balance it with the new mechanics introduced in the game, but otherwise it's what you'd expect from the Scare Scraper. And if we're excluding King Boo from the main story, the Scare Scraper could be a way to have him show up in the game at some point, maybe as the final boss of the Scare Scraper, seeing as the version in Luigi's Mansion 3 ended with an exclusive boss fight against Boolossus, even though that was just a tweaked version of that game's final boss fight, but you get the idea. I guess the online multiplayer could also include a minigame mode like LM3 did. Did anyone actually play this? I know I sure didn't. On a similar topic, alternate costumes. Say what you will about them being paid DLC, My biggest issue is that you'd have to pay real money for cosmetic items that you could only use in a niche multiplayer mode, that itself you need to pay extra money to access. I love subscription services. I love losing more in the long term because short-term flat rate options are being phased out by corporations that want you to pay more money for less content. Maybe there would have been some issues involving the use of an alternate costume in single-player story, but if I'm gonna pay for them, then let me use them in the mode that I want to use them in. Of course, in my ideal world, Luigi's Mansion 4 would let you unlock costumes in-game, whether by buying them in an in-game store or unlocking them through fulfilling certain objectives. A lot of the alts could be color swaps, such as the Scarescraper colors, or alts based on other characters / power-ups. Handful of the costumes could be based on actual outfits Luigi has worn in the past, and of course there'd be a crop of original costumes, some of which being based on areas you explore in this game. One idea that I came up with would be something of a New Game Plus mode, kinda like the PAL region version of the first game's Hidden Mansion, which, if you didn't know, was changed to be more difficult. You could play through the game again, but the enemies would be stronger, puzzles might be changed around a bit, and it'd generally be a bit harder and have a few other differences as well. Think of it like the EX mode in certain Kirby games, complete with different colors for bosses, and even a completely new final boss. Maybe this is where King Boo could fit into things? Probably wouldn't have you playing as a separate character though. Sorry, I guess Waluigi's Mansion will have to wait. So that's about everything I came up with for now. Did you like my ideas, or were they actually terrible and you really want me to stop talking? If you have any of your own ideas for a Luigi's Mansion 4, feel free to share them in the comments below. I'm sorry if this video feels a little bit incomplete, as there is a lot of stuff I didn't really go over. Again, the amount of level concepts I came up with is nowhere near as many as would actually be in this game, and that's not even bringing up the series staples that I didn't even talk about, such as how the boos would work, how toads would work, and where the treasure you collect would factor into things. But I came up with a lot of these ideas more so through stream of consciousness than actual brainstorming like I usually try to, so there's bound to be a lot of gaps in my concepts. I'm not sure if, or even when, we'll see a new Luigi's Mansion game anytime soon, but I figured that this would be a fun topic to discuss for October. All that said, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time for whatever I do next time.